for joining tonight, and welcome to the June 2021 Falls of James Sierra Club meeting. My name is Joe Brancoli. I'm the chair of the Falls of the James group, and our territory in the Falls of the James group, to give you a geographical description, goes from Richmond and the counties north of it, Caroline County in the north, south to the North Carolina state line, and from Charles City County in the east to Powhatan County in the west. Our speaker tonight, in fact, hails from Powhatan County. We have with us Victoria Ronnau, the executive director and founder of VNDER, the Virginia Network for Democracy and Environmental Rights. She's here tonight to speak on a topic that I think the word trending is a little too informal. Let's say it's entering more people's consciousness every day, and that is the rights of nature movement. And with no further ado, we'll turn it over and welcome Victoria.
Well, thank you so much, Joe. I really appreciate it. And I'm very excited to have this opportunity to talk with you all. And I want you to know when I first started with this was not easy for me. To speak in front of people was not my comfort at all. People say, oh, you're so good at it. And I'm thinking, but that's not me. This is not what I enjoy. It's hard to get up in front of people. And it's not until you get hit with something like I was, and some of you might not be familiar, but we got hit with the Cumberland County mega landfill. And I am in Powhatan, and this is proposed right on the border of Powhatan. So even though I had no voice in this whole matter, Powhatan was completely silenced in this. I don't know, you become overwhelmed and you become very passionate. And so what I learned through this process is to just tell my story and not get hung up on a lot of the details and don't get stressed out over these things. So anyways, maneuvering through this process that we have, we realize how silenced our voices are and how boxed in we are with no avenues to bring about change. So sorry, I forgot to move along. And what I mean by that is I'm going to show this video so that you all can see this is our interpretation. We created this video with the support of Leonardo DiCaprio's film crew, which I'm very proud of. So I'm going to play this for you.
This isn't what people think of when they think of Virginia. Our state slogan, Virginia is for lovers, brings to mind romance. But that isn't all Virginia is about. We are lovers of our mountains, rivers, white sand beaches, even the grapes that grow here which produce our wine. These days, Virginia is massive fish kills, toxic water, landfills, clear cutting, pollution, and pipelines. People are getting sick from the air that they're breathing, the fish that they catch, and the rivers in which they swim. Public advisories from the Virginia Department of Health advise women who are pregnant, nursing mothers, and young children are not to eat any fish contaminated either with polychlorinated biphenyls, PCBs, or mercury. Most of the Elizabeth River is too polluted with bacteria to safely swim in. Parts of the James River's muddy bottom contain some of the highest concentrations of toxic polycyclic or aromatic hydrocarbons in the world. This is the Virginia of today. It is sick and desperately needs help. Promises have been made but never kept. Many of those, of course, were never even meant to be kept, but just to kick the can down the road. For years, Virginia's General Assembly has failed to pass environmental laws necessary to ensure that every Virginian can drink clean water, breathe clean air, and enjoy parks and open spaces in their communities. Virginia's Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, has permitted the Dominion Corporation to discharge over 350 million gallons of coal ash wastewater from the Bremo Power Station into the James River. Virginia's Department of Environmental Quality, DEQ, has permitted 3.3 billion gallons of raw sewage to be dumped into our James River waters. This is legalized pollution. We're done with promises. We've lost faith in our state government to fix anything at this point. We can't entrust the health of our state and clean water to politicians and governments who have no interest in actually fixing the problem. Clean water and clean air aren't political talking points. They are our inherent rights as Virginians. In other parts of the U.S. and abroad, communities and countries are moving towards a new way to protect the environment. They're using local governments to guarantee legally enforceable rights to clean air and clean water, and using those governments to provide the highest legal protections available to the natural environment. Here in Virginia, we've taken up the challenge. We are working with counties, cities, and towns to draft and adopt local laws that would recognize rights to clean air and clean water and stop those projects which would violate those rights. These laws would finally fulfill the promises made by politicians over the past 60 years and restore Virginia as a tourist and quality of life destination that has been in the past. We need your help to do just that.
So, that to me sums up kind of what VNDER is about, overlapping. So I'm going to take us back to, you've just learned in your community, wherever you may live, that there's a horrible, unwanted, whatever activity coming to your community. And it could be a solid waste, or the data centers, or the mega landfills, or the pipelines. They're all listed here. You call it bio waste, but it's really human sludge. Even the industrial solar, I'm not talking about, the home solar, the small solar projects and such. I'm talking about like the 3,000 acre solar plants that they're putting in rural communities, water extraction, all of these things. So you just find out about it. And what do? This is what I learned from my experience doing this is, your community, you meet, you have a town hall, you all gather, and you come up with a plan on how you are going to stop this unwanted. And you really believe that you have the voice and the ability, if you just ask and educate yourself on the harms and the whys to which you feel that this project needs to stop. So half of the community starts going to the Environmental Law Center. They go to the Sierra Club. I'm sure you receive many calls, or the other environmental groups. The other half go to the elected officials. They start writing to DEQ, the Army Corps of Engineers. They're trying to get NEPA, allowed to be evaluated. And we all end up right here for 3 minutes, before a board, or before the Citizens Water Board or Air Board. You get 3 minutes after the year, in my case, 4 years now, of doing our homework to learn every detail. We're not biologists, we're not scientists, at least I'm not. And we have to learn about all of this as we're going through this process. So now you've spent all this time and your head's whirling with all of this information, and you get before the board and you're given 3 minutes to tell what you know about why this project should not move forward. We've obviously seen this with the pipeline. On the other side of that little rabbit hole is the corporate attorney. Now, he's heard this all before. This is not their first project. No matter what the project is, it's a corporate entity that has probably done this numerous times through the same permitting process. He's already heard everything that you're going to say, whether it's the water harms, the threatened whatever harms, and he's going to simply turn around to this tall file cabinet that he has with precedents and preemption and cases that he's already done this. It doesn't even take him 3 minutes. Oh, you're talking about water? Oh, well, let me just thumb through, and he pulls out why what you just learned over the last year makes no difference at all before that water board or air board. We certainly saw this when Buckingham Station was going before the compressor station was going before the water board and the air board. They don't care what you have to say. We are boxed in. So we've got state preemption, so we can't go that way. An example of that is the Governor Gilmore back in '99 wanted to ban waste from New York coming down the James into Virginia. And he passed a law to ban the barge waste from coming down. He just didn't want it. Well, immediately after, Waste Management sued the state of Virginia, and due to the Commerce Laws Clause and the contract laws and Dillon's Rule and preemption and these other corporate privileges, the law was rescinded. The Waste Management won. And to this day, barged waste still comes down the James River. Nature is property is another way we're boxed in. So this is true. I mean, in our Constitution, you own your property. You have the right to do whatever you want with your property. And although that's true, and I struggled with how to say, no, you can't do whatever you want with your own property. It really, you do. In every legal document, your rights, your property. But the way I've come to think about it is the very minute your toxic mess rolls off your property into my water stream downstream, you are committing toxic trespass. So although you do have the inherent right to do whatever you want with your property, it should never leave your property and inflict those chemical, toxic, hazardous materials or whatever else on your neighbors or anybody downstream. So I had to retrain my thinking on a lot of these points. Corporate privilege, well, we all know the rights that the corporations have. They are considered a person. In the Supreme Court, their rights have been elevated above the people. And that is proven time and time again when we are trying to stop these unwanted harms in our neighborhoods or in our communities or in our state. But yet nature, which is a living, breathing entity, gets no protection at all. Why is it a non-living corporate entity, and there's a list of them right there on the screen, BP, Nestle coming in, extracting your water. Why is it that they have all of our amendment protections, but yet our ecosystem and our water, which we all depend on for life, we all drink water, nothing will live without water, but yet it has no legal protections at all. I just didn't understand this as I was beginning to learn about the rights of nature. And when I first heard about the rights of nature, I really thought people are going to think I'm running around hugging the trees and singing Kumbaya somewhere in the woods. And it really takes time to rewire your brain on the rights of nature. So although it sounds very tree huggish, when you really come down to it, we need a healthy ecosystem for us to live and every living thing on this planet. So it really takes it to the next step. Our system is really broken and we need to fix it. And the rights of nature is a way to start that process. I've already addressed the corporations have the privilege of our First Amendment. Freedom of speech is they are able to donate to our elected officials, which many of on the call are familiar with. And it's considered freedom of speech. So what they're doing is they're donating large sums of money to our decision-making elected officials who write and pass the laws which directly impact us and our communities. How is that so? How does that even happen? And so when I look at who's writing the environmental laws, who is really protecting our communities when the corporations can come in and just simply donate to the elected officials who are writing the laws. So, a law comes in that we are all pushing and favoring and in support of, and that corporation or the lobbyist comes over and says, Mr. Elected Official, on page 300 in paragraph 6, that's really going to hurt our revenue. Could you just tweak it a little? So that elected official has a decision to make. He either tweaks it and still gets his campaign money because really he's a good guy and overall he does good for Virginia, but now he's being asked to change that protection law to our environment. If he doesn't, the corporation isn't going to give him the funding. He might not get elected again. He might, but he might not. And they will simply get some other evil person to sit in that seat who will have no problems accepting money and changing our laws. So this system that we have going is I think, one of our most problematic issues. The other one is that we see ourselves, and at least at my age, we were always raised that we are at the top of the hierarchy. We're the smartest. We are the only ones that have these certain senses, and the rest of the environment, the rest of nature is just below us. And now, you guys included, being part of the Sierra Club and an environmentally friendly, active in the community and in the state, are realizing that without nature, we won't survive. We are really in the circle of nature. We need that ecosystem. We need clean water. And without it, we will die. So the whole model of us being at the top of the pyramid or in the center and being the almighty, we're really transitioning where we are moving towards living in harmony with nature. We depend on each other to survive. So democracy and the environment go hand in hand, because if we don't have democracy, real democracy, we will never be able to protect our environment. And that's the work that VNDER is beginning to do. We are assisting cities, counties, and towns. We're helping them to understand the state codes. We're helping them to reanalyze the words of the Constitution. We have the right to local self-government. It says so in our Constitution. So we're working with communities that are looking for a way to stop these unwanted harms. And we're rewiring their brains to understand we have the power. We just need to use it and understand what we need to do to get through that process. Florida is one that understands the process. Canada, they just passed the right to protect the Magpie River, which is one of the oldest whitewater rapids in the world. And they just passed and granted rights to the river to evolve and flow and exist free from pollution. And the biggest on that whole thing is that if it's polluted, if a corporate entity causes harm, instead of them paying to the state general public fund this large sum of money that never really trickles back to restore the water to what it was at the very beginning, the money will now go directly towards fixing the harm and bringing it completely back to what it was before the pollutant was released or the harm was done. So I want to go to the Constitution and kind of talk about the Constitution a little bit. I know we all read it. I know we kind of all know what's in there, but it's really over the years that we have been doing this work, and you guys certainly have been probably involved with the environmental battle longer than I have. I'm a rookie. I've only been involved 4 years. I think we beat our heads against the Constitution because we lost faith in it, because our elected officials don't put any muscle behind it. Well, for Article 1 and 2, all power is vested in the people, and the magistrates, to me, resonates. The magistrates are our servants. They are supposed to listen to us. And that's not happening. It doesn't happen in the General Assembly, and it certainly doesn't happen in our counties. So to me, rereading this, and keeping it close vested to me, that you are supposed to listen to your constituents and to us, the people that live in these communities. I have highlighted something that's very, very important in this. Community. Our Constitution of Virginia gives us something that no other constitution in the nation gives any other state. It mentions specifically communities, that we have the rights in our communities. So whenever our government is found inadequate or contrary, or doesn't listen to us, or allows a landfill or a pipeline, and these supervisors or councils continue to spray pesticides when we're saying no, it says community. We have the right to community, local self-government. Now, although we have something that no other state in the US has, specifically addressing community, what other states have is citizens initiative process. In Virginia, every charter, and there were over 250 something charters in every community way back when Virginia was founded. These charters were a way for each little group to say what they wanted, what religion they wanted, how they wanted to work in their community, what was valuable to them, what kind of morals did they have? It was really, the charters were made by that pocket, that community. Over the last 150 years in the state of Virginia, those charters have eroded. There are only 4 charters in the whole state of Virginia that still have any process to a citizens initiative. Hampton is one. Hampton has a pathway to a citizens initiative. Richmond City has a path, although it is a very hard path to go, they still can do a citizens initiative. And we were working with them a few months ago on the right to be free from pesticides. We're not going to use the word ban, because then the Commerce Clause and Dillon's rule come after us. All we're saying is that we have the right in our community to pass local laws, and we, the people, choose to be free from pesticides on school grounds where it causes harms to the children, on county parks or city parks and city property. And the council, we had the council moving in that direction, and then something happened and it stopped. They didn't want to move forward. In the citizens initiative process, we can do a petition and we can gather signatures. But as you know, during COVID, that's a very hard thing to do in such a large city. That's where Florida, Orange County, who is just as large as the city of Richmond, was able to accomplish that. They did a citizens initiative. They got their petitions signed. They got them all done and got them in before COVID really hit and locked everybody down. And we just didn't have that opportunity since we've been working in the COVID environment. Chesterfield County wanted to come to the table. We've talked with them several times, but there's 260 citizens and they need like 10% of the population. And able to do that during COVID is just not going to happen right now. So there are communities that are very large that are recognizing that they have the right to local self-government. But trying to give the people the confidence to stop focusing on that specific unwanted and to take a leap of faith in following our Constitution and do it with everybody in the state that is dealing with the pipelines and all those things that I had at the very beginning. we could make this happen. But we have to kind of put a few in charge of the task of the unwanted so the rest of us could charge at this. And that's a very, very hard thing to do when your backyard is threatened by something very harmful. The construction of the Bill of Rights, you know, the Bill of Rights, it has all of this, everything that we need is in the Bill of Rights. If people would just stop and read what the Bill of Rights has within it. It's a protection for the people, and it gives us the tools to use, but people stopped using them because they caved to Dillon's rule and these other rules that have come along. Dillon's rule is not a law. Dillon was a corporate attorney. He made his money by Western Bell, the Union Pacific, the Texas Pacific, the Missouri Pacific, and there's a couple other Pacifics. And that's how he made his money, by stopping the permitting process and saying that the Western Bell was, you know, for the good of all. He was able to stop the single permits that used to have to take place between county to county to county. These entities used to have to get permits for every time they crossed a county line. Dillon wrote his opinion as a judge. He wrote his opinion, and it was used in the Iowa Supreme Court case, his opinion. And it was used to set precedents for these corporate entities no longer to have to get permits like that. And within a year, 23 states had agreed with Dillon's law, and it's not a law. It was his opinion, and we can fight that. We can do this. So I think we need to stand by our Constitution and take a better look at this to be able to protect our environment, empower ourselves. I wanted to discuss this just for a second. And this is 15.2. And 15.2 restricts our supervisors and councils from passing certain laws. It violates our constitutional right to community local self-government. So our supervisors can tell us how high they want the grass, the noise ordinance. They can write a cute little public health and safety ordinance. But when it comes to saying, I want to grant our water the right to be clean and healthy for us to have healthy water to drink, they will not do it because it steps out of the Virginia State Code 15.2. So when we start talking rights of nature and passing ordinances to protect our environment, the supervisors are in favor. You start talking to them and you can win them over. But they talk to the county attorney, and the county attorney gives them all these reasons why they shouldn't discuss the rights of nature, because the county could be sued. Well, being sued, having the right to clean water, I think our community in Powhatan would rather be sued than be dealing with the landfill. All of that runs downstream. But the county attorneys, people very much listen to those county attorneys, and the supervisors and council members don't want to be sued. Their job is to protect the assets of the county. The counties and the cities are considered a corporate entity themselves, and the attorney's job is to protect the corporate entity. I know this gets very confusing, but his job is to not get sued. He looks very good if he doesn't get sued. If the county doesn't get sued, he's done his job. So he will do everything and anything to talk the supervisors and our representatives out of carrying our voice forward, which is what they're supposed to do, so that we don't get sued. So 15.2 comes into play in a little bit. I have to read this myself. So getting back to 15.2, you know, the supervisors are supposed to secure and promote the general welfare of its inhabitants, the municipality, our health, our safety, peace, good order, comfort, convenience, morals, trade, all these things. And so they're supposed to look out for us and our environment. So when we ask our honorable supervisors and council and tell them you have the authority to protect your constituents as they took an oath to do, that county attorney is the one that's going to be the stop on that. And we get a lot of pushback from that. So let's move on to the rights of nature. I just want to check my time. The rights of nature. And how does the Constitution in 15.2 and everything we talked about in those blocks of, law, how does that work with the rights of nature? The Constitution gives us, again, the right to local self-government. So what we are doing within communities, Nelson County, Pulaski County, you heard me talk about Richmond, we're working some in Hampton. We are taking the right to pass laws in our localities to bypass DEQ and the Army Corps of Engineers from just rubber stamping and permitting. And in my mind, and I know in Thomas's mind, in 10 years, I can tell you that DEQs and the Army Corps of Engineers will no longer be permitting. The counties and the municipalities and the people within those municipalities will have the right to decide what happens in their communities as far as these projects that come into the communities. So I'm going to use Pulaski. I talked a little bit about Richmond, but I have one for Powhatan as well on the pesticides. But Pulaski is actually moving. I think Pulaski County has a good shot at being the second in the nation to really make this happen. And Thomas believes so too. They have the Claytor Lake and the New River. And how we work this is we sit down with community members. So it doesn't matter what community. So if you have a group of people, a group of citizens that are very passionate about protecting your water or protecting the butterflies or protecting the bees, and you want to sit down and write an ordinance, you give us the demands. What is it that you're asking? What is it that you want for your community? And you list down, you might have 5 to 6 things on there that you want. The right to clean water, the right to not have pesticides exposed to your children. We carry that back to our attorneys and we put it in legal verbiage, like these ordinances here. One is for Pulaski, that's the actual Pulaski ordinance. The other is for Hampton. We were working on Hampton because the water at the beach and the big deal at the beach area is that everything's being privatized and access to the private boat ramps and the private pieces of the beach and the water are going away as we know it. Every beach has signs up, no trespassing. Well, where are we to have access to the beach? And where are the rest of the citizens that don't want that hotel or don't want their boat ramp taken going to go to have access to the water? So that is actually theirs. Orange County, Florida, I have theirs as well. And what these ordinances do is we strategically work within these communities to campaign. So we find these supervisors or council members that understand the rights of nature with us going in and utilizing our tools and our knowledge and talk to them about what the rights of nature, what does that look like? And we talk through those issues of the comments that will come back at you. Like I was saying, everybody thinks we're tree huggers and don't take it seriously. It all comes back to us needing water, all of us. All life depends on water. And if we continue to pollute, we are actually harming ourselves. And life will not be as it is today. So we talk with those supervisors one-on-one, and we usually get a sponsor and a co-sponsor. That's normally the way this happens. There's always usually 2 environmentally friendly people on the board. So then we take a look at the other 3. You only need, and as most of the supervisors, most counties have 5 supervisors, except for the larger ones like Chesterfield. But so we start analyzing and breaking down the other supervisors. How many votes did they get into office by? How many votes do we think we can campaign and get signatures on a petition? So when we utilize a petition, we know it has no legal ramifications. It's not like we can do a citizens initiative except in those 4 localities, but it shows that supervisor that we have 1,000 signatures that support this rights of nature, the right to keep the Claytor Lake healthy, the right to have the ecosystem within the New River be maintained and healthy, so that the people have the right to clean drinking water. It starts to put pressure on that supervisor. It's all very strategically campaigned, and we can flip that supervisor. And that's what we're doing right now in Pulaski. We've got a sponsor. We've got a potential co-sponsor that's leaning our way. So then we evaluate the other supervisors. We just need 3 to pass it and make it local law. And then what does that mean? Well, for Pulaski, it's mostly rural. And 66% of the 96 communities in Virginia, the 96 counties, 66% are on private drinking well water. Well, there's not a law in the state that protects your private drinking water. This landfill's coming. I mean that figuratively. It's not coming, but say it comes. They don't come out and test my water. I live in Powhatan. I'm a 1.5 miles away from it. They don't care about my water. So what happens if my water in my well gets contaminated? Then my husband and I are going to be buying a lot of water. So there's no laws. Orange County, Florida, who passed this ordinance in their community, is the only county in the whole United States that legally has a right to clean water. So how to maneuver through this, in environmental litigation, many cases, like if my well was to become polluted, are unsuccessful. The people who bring suit against these corporate entities, we don't have standing to do so. But when we grant rivers rights to evolve, exist, flow, maintain a healthy ecosystem, for us to have the right to clean water, it gives us standing in court. It gives us a legal hearing, which we can't get right now. Orange County, I go back to them. They passed a law to protect the Wekiva River and grant the Wekiva River rights. A developer is coming in to build 3,500 homes on the wetlands of the Wekiva, and their DEQ is getting ready to permit it. So Chuck and his group, his Florida Rights of Nature group, are suing the developer for threatening to harm the Wekiva and the wetlands. It gives them legal standing to take it to court. And it gives these new environmental attorneys that are coming out are using this new tool, this new verbiage, the Constitution, the local self-government angle to write these laws and help communities like Orange County stand up to protect our environment. This is the work that we are doing in the communities right now. We are trying to protect everything on this image. In Florida as well, they are now doing a movement to bring the animals and life into this circle that they're building. They are weaving a web and they are building it strong. And I want Virginia to be following. I started with Chuck. I want to be with them. I want Virginia to be protected. I want our waters to be clean. I want all of these creatures, including our bees and our pollinators, to be protected. And this is what the rights of nature is about. So we're moving in several counties. If you all would like to ask questions. I'm certainly here for questions. But if you would like to move your community, or there's an unwanted in your community and you feel like you can let that go to focus and move this forward, you know, we would love the help. We have a marketing media team in Virginia. We have community organizers strategically placed and assisting us. We have environmental projects going on in Powhatan. We are doing a monarch butterfly garden, which gives us the opportunity to talk with the high school students, and every high school student has their parents coming along. So we get to kind of talk about the rights of nature to the parents, and what the pesticides and herbicides and what our goals are for Powhatan to be free from pesticides on the school grounds and such. So I'm open to questions if you have any questions.
Okay, this is Glenn. I'm happy to moderate this questionnaire period here. And I guess I'll just start off a point of clarification, Victoria. We did lose the litigation. I mean, the legislation related to barge traffic and other restrictions was determined to be unconstitutional because of the Commerce Clause, but we did stop the barge traffic. The traffic charges do not come up to James. I think, I'm not sure whether it was legal or political, but we did stop them. And
That's awesome. That's awesome.
And actually, for a period of time, we prevented any new mega dumps from being built. Now there's a bunch of mega dumps being built now, like the one you're talking about.
Yeah.
But for a while there, we had fended them off just because of the opposition back, I guess, in the early 2000s. So,
well, Glenn, I don't know if you know this, and this is maybe a little off topic, but what has happened in our northern neighbors, if anyone has been convicted of a hazardous crime or any type of violation, whether it be embezzling, as one of the landfill owners was, they can no longer be permitted in that state. And because Scott Earl is such a large presence up there in New York and New Jersey, they are branching down to Virginia and Ohio, because he can no longer get permitted in those states that put that into their law. We tried to do that here, to say if you've been convicted of any crime, you cannot be permitted for a landfill, but
that's an excellent suggestion. I think we should consider that again in terms of the bad actors being prohibited from permitting, because oftentimes they're frequent violators. Andrew Peacock had a question for you. He was just curious how VNDER is funded.
So VNDER was given a private donation of a large sum of money to launch us. I work for free. Everything I do is for free. So, and the community organizers and such were free. We took that fund that was given to us and secured a constitutional environmental attorney that worked with Thomas for 25 years. So we have him on retainer. The other money, we have received grants for doing rights of nature work in Nelson County, and we received a grant to do rights of nature work in Pulaski County. The money that we received from both of those, if those counties don't move, and I think Nelson is kind of in stall right now, I think they're tired. They fought the ACP, they're tired. And we cannot seem to get traction in Nelson. But if the funds that we get through these donors that are targeted for a certain community, if the community doesn't roll, VNDER has permission, and it's stipulated that we can roll it towards a community that's actually rolling. So it's private funding, donations, fundraisers, and such like that.
You mentioned Orange County, Florida, and I'm just curious to know, I know there's been efforts, for example, a friend of mine worked for the Surf Club in Florida for a long time. They had an initiative to prohibit basically to prohibit the application of phosphorus fertilizers on lawns during the rainy season. You could, and they had a number of counties that passed those ordinances. And then what happened is the state legislature came in and passed a bill that preempted them. So I would think that Orange County would be susceptible to the same state government preemption because that's what Florida does.
So I guess what it is depends on how you write these ordinances. And Thomas Lindsay, who is our partner with the Center for Democratic and Environmental Rights. He is the founder of the rights of nature, along with Christopher Stone, who was a legal scholar on the rights of nature. But Thomas writes these, like I said, where we don't ban pesticides, but in that ordinance that we drafted for Powhatan and Richmond, it says, we the people have the right to be free from pesticides. That is a game changer because we are not saying we want to ban pesticides, which gets the corporations, it gives them a thread to hang on to slap our hands and say that you can't ban us. We're just saying we have the right to be free from, and we do. So I think how Thomas has evolved over these years, I've watched these ordinances change as even Lake Erie was preempted really in protecting the rights of Lake Erie. He took that ordinance and even changed the verbiage. I think every time something happens, Glenn, he rewrites and learns from it.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Any other questions for Victoria?
Yes, there are several there. I saw several. Linda, I think you said you had a question of whether both ordinances have been adopted, the ones in Pulaski County. Is that?
Yeah, I wasn't clear on that, but I have a follow-up to that too. So have those two areas actually passed those ordinances?
No, not yet, but I can tell you Pulaski is moving strong. We will have a very strong state as presence. The people, not so much VNDER, but the people of the county, we are giving them the tools to do this themselves. So at the county fair, July 17th, they're going to have a table. And they are going to have it really snazzed up to really kick this off. They are working behind the scenes. They're a rural community. They don't do a lot of, at least the people that I work with don't do a lot of social media and stuff. Most of theirs are face-to-face, business, farming, crossing over in their lives. So they are moving very strong in Pulaski.
Okay. Well, here's a strategy that I've been thinking about recently. For instance, one of the most powerful movements that happened several decades ago was MAD, Mothers Against Drunk Driving. If the environmental issue is framed as impacts on children, people respond much more strongly. Mothers respond much more strongly. You see, I saw in the paper the other day that the theme park, King's Dominion, in part said that mothers don't want their kids working in public this summer in large crowds. So I think as a strategy, talking to PTAs,
Yes.
to civic associations,
Yes.
and women's groups, where you can really say, here's the potential risk to your children.
Yes.
And also there's many mothers who have children with disabilities that firmly believe that there are environmental factors and we know that there are environmental factors that can cause prenatal disabilities. So I think it's a strategy. We really ought to mobilize the women's groups on, this is for the future of our children, the health of our children. And that resonates much more with politicians too.
Yes.
Because what are they going to say? No, we don't care about your kids? Of course not. So just it's a statement, and it's a strategy that I think the environmental groups overall ought to think about doing more of.
We are also partnered with non-toxic communities, which actually helped Charlottesville write a land management plan to not use pesticides and herbicides on school properties and such. So it is moving that way, and we are, but COVID is very difficult to get before these groups, but it's lightening up now, and I can feel it opening up. And, you know, having that garden clubs, I am all over
Yeah,
social
yeah.
media on the garden clubs and the pollinator clubs. And Claytor Lake is the big issue right now because they do drawdowns, and I don't know if you know what they are, but drawdowns are the wealthy people around the lake want to clean out around their docks. So they ask the American energy plant to block the water and let the water decrease 8 to 15 feet so that they can go out around their docks and clean their docks. However, the issue is 55% of the endangered mussels around the lake decease and are killed. And they are a protected endangered species. And this is only done, the AEP is not the initiator of this, and the Department of Wildlife Resources were not in favor of this. It was the current supervisor that lives around the lake and a friend of hers that lives around the lake that ran out and got 1,000 signatures. And the rest of the county are farmers at the other end, and they had no idea what was going on. So, you know, focusing on the Claytor Lake and the New River is resonating in Pulaski right now because they are paying $300,000, I think, a year of the taxpayers' money to do a drawdown for a certain end of the community. And it's harming their ecosystem and their water, and they feel very strongly they have the inherent right in this rural community to protect their water. And that's where they're moving right now.
Another question for you from Rick Shingles asks whether or not the Orange County ordinance has been tested in court or challenged in court yet.
They're doing that right now, right this very moment. If you Google, and I can send it to you, Rick, if you Google the Orange County rights of nature, they are suing a developer as we sit here in our chairs. So it's going to court.
Okay. And another question from the other Victoria on the call. She asks, have you found that county supervisors or county attorneys are more willing to approve ordinances that attribute environmental rights to people instead of giving environmental rights to, like, rivers, for example?
I find that the county attorneys and the supervisors are very reluctant to do rights of nature of any sort or protections. You know, it really is about protecting our ecosystem. We could go off and get our attorneys to focus on the dump. I mean, Glenn, you know, I walked away from the dump. I could put my resources all in the dump and the environmental justice to the Vine Grove School. But that is not going to help my children, my grandchildren. It's not going to help the butterflies that are dying. It's not going to help clean water. And I really feel like we have to stop playing whack-a-mole. And, you know, Augusta County is all predominantly well water, and Seabright water extraction is sucking their aquifer dry. What are these people going to do when there's no more water in the aquifer? And the DEQ and VDH put out in 2017 and published this article, and it lists every county off of the James River and establishes when that county is going to exceed the demands of the James River. This water that we have access to is not forever, and we have to value what we have here because it's just not sustainable what we're doing, the polluting and such. So I think that focusing on granting rivers rights, and that strategy was by the American legal scholar Christopher Stone back in the 1970s, when he came up with the strategic environmental defense to bring standing to our environment. And until we actually can be heard in court, I think we're just going to be running around.
he authored a paper called "Should Trees Have Standing?" I think,
Yes, yes,
when I was back in law school, and that paper has been around for decades now, and has been getting a little bit more attention, in part because of work by people like you, Victoria, and Tom Lindsay. I will note Richard Groover kind of second Linda's suggestion about getting mothers involved, and he has some experience with Mothers Against Drunk Drivers, and pointed out that they would show up at trials and pressure judges, and also were very active in getting people elected who would pledge to do this. And there's other groups. I know there's a mothers group that's involved with gun rights, and there's another mothers group that's involved with climate change. And so I think that is a good constituency here. I will say, as an attorney myself, that I know that this legal theory is a big lift, and it will take a lot of people pushing a lot of places, and really, as Richard Brewer mentions, electing people who have a different perspective, because most of our elected officials actually do believe that corporations are people, and have more rights than us. And that's Democrats and Republicans. And speaking of Democrats and Republicans who believe corporations are people, Terry McAuliffe has been announced the winner of the gubernatorial race while we were on the call here. So,
oh my goodness.
So anyway, he happens to be a corporate Dem.
Yeah.
Any other questions before we switch it back over to Siobhan and to Joe?
I will say one more thing before I go. The thing about the water is it was so successful in Florida because it was 89% bipartisan. Who, Democrat, progressive, Republican, is going to get up and deny you the right to healthy water? It's just not going to happen. So I think that this is something that we can do, and I'm hoping to get support in Pulaski, because if we can get this to roll in one community, and I think they are the key at this moment, I do. I think if we can all descend, reach out to those people, there's a petition out there, start putting the pressure on these supervisors to pass it.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that, Victoria. We thank you for your efforts. And let me turn it over to Joe, I believe, who will close out and transfer over to our announcements, okay?
Sure. Thank you so much for having me.
Victoria, it was an absolute pleasure to hear from you tonight. And as always, Falls of the James Group, to express our appreciation, offers a $50 contribution to a group of our speaker's choice. And tonight that group is her group, VNDER. And we will be very pleased to make that contribution. I want to also notice and thank Rick Shingles for being with us tonight. He's the chair of the New River Group of Sierra Club, in whose territory Pulaski County is located. And finally, mention that Daryl Downing is our chapter representative to the Council of Club Leaders. And it's really thanks to him that the Virginia chapter took a vote and is signing on in support of the Florida chapter Sierra Club's resolution on the rights of nature, which is now before the National Sierra Club. So thank you, Daryl, for bringing that to our attention. And it was our great pleasure earlier this week to communicate to Florida that we have voted in support of their resolution. As we move forward into summertime, many things will be going on. I have a feeling people are going to be active here, there, anywhere they can get to. I would like to mention that 2 nights from tonight, on Thursday at 6 p.m., our Falls of the James Group Skip the Plastics Committee has its monthly meeting. Chairperson Lisa Thompson would welcome anyone to that meeting, and we will be happy. We will send the information for the link to that tomorrow when we send to everyone who's registered for tonight's meeting. And our next speaker program will be on the second Tuesday in September. That will be virtual again. Wait a minute, wait a minute. This is not a decision of the Sierra Club. It is actually a decision of the Science Museum of Virginia, who have been kind enough to host us for years now, free of charge. Their decision is not to have group meetings there until at least October. So everyone mark your calendars to be virtual again on the second Tuesday in September, when we have Steve Nash presenting about red wolves. And with that, again, thank you all for coming tonight. And thanks to Siobhan and to Glenn, who host these meetings, who make them run properly. And have a wonderful summer, everybody. Good night.
Good night. Thanks a lot again, Victoria. Appreciate it.
Yes.
Thank you so much for having me.
Okay, take care.
Oops.